So now for the second part, I'll be talking about something called task management. It's a little similar to time management lah, if you ask me, because we've got to learn how to plan and arrange our tasks to fit the time we've got, right? So from my point of view, task management is an indispensable skill that many youngsters lack in this day and age. We hear a lot about procrastination, assignments past their due dates, time passing by, life goes on. Okay, sorry, went a bit off track there. But what I'm trying to stress here is the importance of task management. With enough practice, it will become a habit, and eventually, it becomes a mindset. The correct mindset to bring along with you into the working world. So in the following slides, I will be sharing some tips I use and live by, but I need you to understand that there's a possibility that none of these may work for you. Because everyone can do it, but it will not work for everyone. It's just like how some people like pineapple on pizza and some don't. However, if you don't try, you'll never know. Another principle I do live by. Anyway, let's get right into it. Okay, so personal opinion number 1. Create a master schedule at the start of every year. Here's how I do this. In December every year, I create a handwritten timetable on a very random piece of paper. I divide them into days like this, days of the week, and simply write down any activity I might have on said day. For example, tuition, gym sessions, cocoa activities, and so on. But of course, there's a system to it, so hear me out. First, put down your tuition classes and activities that absolutely cannot be replaced at other times. That means for that week, there's only one session of that particular activity. Then pick the days you like to put those tuition classes which have more flexible times. So when you're doing this step, you start writing down the less important activities. Then add anything else you might want. Like last year, I even added the fees for my respective tuition classes. So because I'm a very forgetful person, right, I keep forgetting to pay the fees sometimes. And I know that some of you might face the same problem too. What I do is I created a very simple, sort of like a schedule lah. And for each month, I wrote down each month from January to November or December like that. And then each of my tuition classes. So if I have paid for that month, then I just simply tick on it. So I can constantly remember whether I've paid for it or not. It's a very simple tip, but it's also very effective. So I would recommend that. Right, so I find this master schedule super helpful, especially for those of you who need to figure out when you'll be available to go to a certain tuition or that. I did this ever since I was very young because there were so many things for me to keep track of, and having a physical visual copy of my timetable here gave me a clear idea on when I would be free and when I would not. Some tuition centers offer the same classes at different times of the week, right? So you can put those down too, so you'll be clear about some other alternate options you have. When someone asks me out, I just need to check my timetable. Of course, it doesn't have to be an ugly piece of paper like what I did. These days, I find it much easier to use our phones. Which brings us to personal opinion number 2. Our phones are indispensable in this day and age. Why? Because 1, you've got everything in there. Notebooks, calendars, clocks, classes, and so much more. Number 2, you bring it with you everywhere. To the mall, to your car, and even to the toilet. So with this well-established fact that your phone is with you everywhere you go, why not use it to boost your task management skills, right? I'll tell you a few tricks I use that I feel really helps with my forgetful brain. So what I do is I use the notes and calendar app on my phone a lot. And I also set alarms for almost everything. I suggest that you put the calendar and notes widget, right, on your home screen. So this page you see right here, this is actually my phone. This page is right next to the menu page, which every phone opens to. There's a system I use lah. So listen to how I do it. When something important pops up, for example, your mom says, "Hey, remind me, later I want to buy whatever. You open your phone and then type that immediately in your notes. Because you see from this widget here, there's a little plus sign there. You just press on that and then you write that immediately in your notes. Then you put a timer, or what it means is to put an alarm 10 minutes from now. You don't need to worry about forgetting, because when the alarm rings 10 minutes from now, you'll find yourself asking, why did I set that alarm there in the first place? Then you start thinking back and you remember your mom's grocery list from 10 minutes ago. This is a system I find especially useful if we've got many things on our mind and that we're afraid of forgetting something. So I got this idea a while back when I saw an article telling us to put something unusual at a place where you will definitely see in the future. So your memory is triggered to recall why you put that unusual thing there in the first place. For instance, like a bright colored sock on your doorknob to remind you that you have to get the groceries later. So that's one thing. Another tip to fully utilize your phone's calendar is that when you're at a meeting and somebody says, oh, so our next meeting will be whenever, you immediately, take note the key here is immediately, you immediately open your phone and add an event with the stated time to that particular date on your calendar. This whole process takes less than half a minute to do so. And some calendars even give you reminders. So you have to remember to do that immediately, right? So you don't have to be afraid that you'll forget that particular event in the future, because your calendar will remind you. This is great if you're afraid that you'll forget your favorite person's birthday, then you just simply put it into the calendar. It is a relationship saver. Of course, these are not the only functions, but they are the most basic ones. So if you understand how this whole reminder system works, then you could start looking at more advanced features and add on whatever suits you. Moving on, you have to learn how to eliminate distractions. Recently, I've been using the Do Not Disturb function on my phone a lot. Notifications are terrible attention seekers. This Do Not Disturb function, which you can probably find in your phone settings or in the notifications bar above, I don't know. It barricades all notifications and your phone will just be dead quiet there sitting in front of you. However, you must take note that this might not work for all occasions. If you're expecting an important message, then don't use it. If you've got an event coming so soon, don't use it. If your ex is disturbing you and you just can't seem to block them, then use it lah. But you have to decide well whether it would benefit you or whether it could cause a disaster before you click that Do Not Disturb button, because it really stops your phone from, that constant buzzing noise of notification. So, well, you have to be careful. Okay, so last but not least, do not procrastinate. All caps. I'm sorry that I'm starting to sound like Kongzi trying to preach, but one life principle I go by is to never procrastinate. Or in Chinese, we call it 今日事今日毕. It seriously helps a lot. For example, if your teacher gives you homework that is due only 2 weeks from now, try to do it by tonight or within the following few days. Don't think that it'll be easier for you to do if you leave it longer untouched. Because I can confirm, I can guarantee that the longer you leave it untouched, the harder it is to actually touch it. But of course, make sure that the work you do is quality work lah. If not, what's the point of even doing it, right? Okay, so another example is if you've got to take a photo for your class magazine. Like for this year, our Form 5 students, we had to take a photo for our class magazine. You have to try to do it by tonight or maybe, by tomorrow. But you have to do it as soon as possible because you'll be able to get rid of that bugging feeling at the back of your mind as quickly as possible. Even so, there are situations where leaving something undone is, there are situations where leaving something undone for some time is not procrastination. Like times when you've got something else to do that's much more important, that's much more pressing, then you try to do that first. Or occasionally, maybe when you just aren't feeling too 今日事今日毕 on that day, then just do the work tomorrow lah. That's fine also. Just remember, don't treat procrastination as a norm because you're much, much better than that. And finally, we'll move on to our third segment, which is also the last part. Right now, I'm going to share a little bit that I learned at a leadership summit I attended recently, hosted by the Harry Singha Foundation. So a word of advice, if you've come upon any such program, camp or activity that's about leadership or youth camps or whatever, don't hesitate to give it a try because they really can benefit you in more ways than one. So today I'll be sharing about the light and BWF model. And no, I'm not talking about the light above us or the Badminton Worlds Federation. That's a topic for another day. So first off, the light model, which we use to turn our bad days into our best days. Have you ever had a terrible experience, but years later when you look back and reflect, you feel a little thankful that it happened because you've learned and grown so much from it? That's what the light model is for. It's a step-by-step process that allows you to learn from a particular experience and turn it into a lesson you may benefit from. If you want, I suggest you could note this down because it could be helpful when you've got a friend going through a bad situation and you've got no idea at all how to help them. So for this part, I think it would be great if I could give an example. So I chose a very personal experience that really hurt me a lot, a breakup. Yeah, that sounds super juicy, but it was until their mother found out and stuff went down. So I could go along with what happened, why it happened, and how I felt, but that's another story for another day. If you want to know, you can come find me yourself. So I'll bring you along with how I totally should have faced the aftermath. But of course, I hadn't known about this at that time, so it went pretty bad lah. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, let it out. Letting it out, mind you, is not the same as letting it go. Letting it out simply means to exhale all that pent-up emotion inside of you, in whatever method you like. For me, of course, I talked a lot about it with my closest friends, but I also put the emotion into poetry and writing. I wrote very poetic stuff and posted them to my close friends list on Insta. But doing so somehow gave me an odd sense of calm, and it helped me a lot. It made me feel relieved and, I didn't feel so much pent-up emotion in me after that. So I think that if the method you're using isn't bringing any harm to yourself or to anyone, then no one should stop you because you've got your own right? So step number 2, initial meanings. This is where you've got to start thinking. Here I started questioning myself. Stuff like, why this bad experience happened in the first place? Am I wrong? Was it them or was it nobody's fault at all? And then what did I gain from this? How did I initially feel? Was that irrational? Once you're aware of all these initial meanings, then you move on to number 3. G stands for greater meanings. Think about what you could extract from all this information you have, from all these questions you've asked yourself, and try to turn them into a lesson that you can benefit from. For me, I learned that there are people who are still very unaccepting, but who are we to decide what other people think, right? And I also learned, surprisingly, how much I need to value friendship, and sometimes intimate love isn't everything. Okay, so step number 4, honor yourself. Put yourself first, always. I still have trouble doing that, and I know a lot of you do, but it's a learning process. To honor yourself is to understand that yes, this day wasn't meant to be a good day for me, but I've got the power to change that and make it one of the best days of my life. Finally, number 5, to train yourself. Train yourself to accept the fact that this happened, but it didn't happen without a reason that you can learn from. And of course, learn to apply this guide to any situation you might face. Train yourself to apply this guide to any bad day you might be going through. For me, it's been great. After learning both of our lessons, we're still growing together, and things may turn out for the better. So great things come when you least expect it. It could be a failed test or a falling out with your friend. Who knows, right? Next up is something about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, or what some people call EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions you manage your own emotions well. For example, how you might want to control your temper in public. It includes stuff like self-awareness, empathy, motivation, self-regulation, social skills, and whatnot. Therefore, we've got to learn something called state management, which is the ability to manage and control when and how to express the emotions we feel. So to do that, we use what we call the BWF model. Now, getting to a state of emotion, it's a process. Think about it like baking a cake. If you've got all the right ingredients for it, you'll get it in the end. Say we're making a chocolate cake. What do you need to make a chocolate cake? Right, you need eggs, sugar, chocolate flour, butter, yes, all of these things to make the perfect chocolate cake. But can you put chili powder? Can you have chili powder in your chocolate cake? Can you? No, right? Okay, so the thing is, we cannot have that. We cannot have chili powder in your chocolate cake because that spoils the entire chocolate flavor of your cake. It's the same with your emotions. If you're baking the anger cake, you need emotions or ingredients like hate, resentment, complaint, all those. So to prevent yourselves from reaching that end product or the end angry cake, you put an odd ingredient into the recipe and change the outcome. You want to disrupt the entire recipe from you being angry. And to do that, we pay attention to our BWF, our body, words, and focus. How to do it, of course, this would be easier to understand with an example. So I would like to have someone share about how they are feeling recently.
Yeah, I would like to share.
All right.
So
Okay.
Recently I've been feeling annoyed.
Okay, all right. So now I want you to tell us, how does your body react when you feel annoyed? Like, is there any particular body movement you do, or how do you particularly act when you're feeling annoyed? Do you have that?
Yup, I do have times like that. I always put my head in my hands like this and kind of depressed, or I clench my fist really, really hard.
Okay, so that, my friends, that is called your body's reaction to a certain stimulus, right? So here's how you could work the BWF method. First, your body. You already know that, Shui, you already know that you put your hands in your head when you're feeling annoyed. So how about you try to change that and you put your and you try to put your hands somewhere else, say on your heart, for instance, or under your butt, or wherever. Just don't put them in your head. So essentially, what you're trying to do here is to disrupt that certain action, or to prevent you from reaching 100% annoyment mode. You get me? Alright, so moving on, the second question I would like to ask you. Is there anything you usually say out loud when you feel annoyed? Imagine that you're in 100% rampage mode now, alone in your room, super bitching about something. What do you say? And do you say it out loud, or do you say it in your mind, or, how would you react?
Well, sometimes I say it aloud, but most times I say all kinds of really bad stuff. The usual. Yeah.
Okay, I know, yeah, the usual. So here's what you could try doing. Change the word or the phrases that you usually say into something silly or something nonsense. WTF could stand for something totally different, You should not say what you usually do. Instead, repeat this new word or this new phrase that you have pre-prepared again and again and again until it sounds silly. So when you're feeling annoyed, right? When you're feeling annoyed, instead of saying stuff like WTF or whatever, say something that you usually wouldn't say. So you think, this is a little weird, and it could change the outcome. Lastly, F for focus. Focus on something that you've pre-prepared. For example, if you're starting to feel annoyed, you force yourself to focus on that one time when you confessed to your crush. Just an example, I know that a lot of you have not been through that, but I have every time. So that's what I choose to think about. It's super embarrassing, and it's an event that's significant enough. It's so vivid that you'll immediately be hit with some other emotion that will be stronger than the one you're currently experiencing. So you focus on that emotion and keep focusing until you're feeling that large tsunami of annoyance inside you die down to a little splash. After you think you've cooled down enough from all of these self-induced disruptions and interruptions, you're good to go and reflect on the situation. It's important that you have a clear, rational mind always. So when emotions get the better of you, your first response should be to find a way to calm down and think rationally as soon as possible before doing anything else at all. So anyways, thank you to Shuyi for sharing your experience with us. Okay, that's about it.